Thank you, Your Honor, for that amazing introduction. Once again, my name is Austin Lee, and this is Redefining the American Dream. So, to start my talk, I want to quickly tell you all a story. On January 10th, 1986, a young college freshman flew to America from Shanghai, China. Today, Shanghai is a business capital in one of the largest cities in the world. It has a population of over 26.32 million, and to put that into perspective, San Francisco's population is just over 900,000, and the population of the entire Bay Area is around 7.7 million, which is still only about a third of Shanghai's population. That being said, when the man was born, China was in a period of chaos. The Chinese communists had just defeated the nationalists in the Chinese Civil War, and under communist rule, China experienced a period known today as the Cultural Revolution, in which the communist government attempted to purge any remnants of democracy and capitalism. As a result, China became extremely poor, schools were mostly closed off, and students were sent off to work in farms and factories. The man I mentioned was one of those students. Although his family was very educated, his father a college professor, and his grandfather even a former nationalist politician, because China was so poor, food was rationed, and his family could only eat about 1 pound of meat per month. He often tells me today that his dream growing up was to one day eat a dozen eggs. Now entering his final year of high school, he had heard many stories from his grandparents about the wonders of America and the prestige of its educational system. Working with his parents, he then flew to America in an attempt to obtain a better education and start a family. However, once he arrived in San Francisco, he was instantly met with hardships. For starters, he couldn't speak or understand any English, which made it extremely hard to communicate with others. Simple words like water, car, sleep, food, they meant absolute gibberish to him. On top of that, he only had $40 and his father's wedding ring, which he gave to him in case he needed money to survive. So all in all, he maybe had a little over $1,000. This isn't nearly enough to survive long term, and entering his freshman year in college, he also had to pay for college tuition. And because of his ethnicity and his low English vocabulary, he was often looked down upon and rejected from jobs. In order to survive, he worked 4 jobs, which varied from construction to cleaning bathrooms and toilets to waiting tables. And even then, he couldn't make money. So he had to beg on the streets for money or eat leftovers from restaurants. Nevertheless, he worked extremely hard, and for the next 4 years, he worked extremely hard and gained his MBA, thus graduating from San Francisco State in 1990. Coming out of college, he continued to face discrimination, like the ones I said, and after 2 years, he finally found a job opening as a marketing consultant at a computer company. He absolutely hated his job, hated it, but he had no choice. He had to make money in some way, so he had to stick with it. And after a few years, he became a stockbroker in the heart of San Francisco, fell in love, got married, and started a family with 2 baby boys. That man was my father. Now, the reason why I'm telling you all this story is that it exemplifies the hardships most Asian immigrants faced while trying to attain the American dream. Although most stories may not be as extreme as my father's, they convey the same general idea. The American dream was much harder to achieve for Asian immigrants, and it was closed off to the wealthy white population. I keep on bringing up the American dream, but what actually is it? In actuality, the American dream has no real definition and varies from person to person. It's everyone's individual version of what they believe constitutes the morally good life in the 21st century. For example, my father's American dream was to come to America, start a family, and set the groundwork for his future family and kids. While on the other hand, my American dream is to go to a prestigious college, start my own business, and to live a life of adventure and travel the world. However, in retrospect, the general definition of the American dream is the ideal where everyone is created equal and has equal access to opportunities. Let's be real. This version of the American dream can never be achieved, and I'm not going to stand up here and try to tell you guys that it can be, because let's be real, it's a farce, But while comparing my father's dream to mine, I realized that in terms of the American dream's attainability for Asian immigrants, not much has changed. Although hardships have shifted, the American dream still remains solely to a very small and minuscule portion of our population. There's an ongoing illusion that Asian immigrants and Asian Americans are a part of this percentage, as we are referred to as a model minority group whose high achievements and academic stereotypes prove our access to the dream. But this couldn't be farther from the truth, especially with the recent onslaught in anti-Asian sentiments and Asian hate during the pandemic. We continue to face systematic racism and discrimination, are still seen as perpetual foreigners, and our ability to succeed is hindered by academic stereotypes. I quickly want to go back to my point about Asian Americans being a model minority group. Hardworking, well-educated, and successful. Because of these reasons, Asian Americans are often left out of discussion regarding discrimination within the workplace. According to a study conducted by the Ascend Foundation, a pan-Asian organization, Asian Americans made up 27% of professional workers at companies including Google, Hewlett-Packard, Intel, LinkedIn, and Yahoo, but only made up 14% of executive positions. On the other hand, people of white ethnicity made up 62% of professional workers, but held a staggering 80% of executive positions. Another article from Bloomberg Businessweek revealed that although Goldman Sachs had 27% of Asian Americans, only 11% held senior management positions. Another study that analyzed our nation's EEOC workforce data revealed that although Asian Americans were the least likely group to be promoted, and people of white ethnicity were twice as likely. Although these aren't blatant forms of racism, they reveal how systematic norms have hindered Asian Americans' abilities to succeed and surpass their ceilings. That being said, following the pandemic, discrimination towards Asians has become more real and intentional than ever. I remember at the peak of the pandemic, my parents were in the living room watching the presidential debate between Trump and Biden. They were in the living room, and I went upstairs to get some water, when suddenly I heard the words, "It's China's fault. This should have never happened." Moments later, I heard the phrase, "China virus." Initially I was a little put off, but I knew what was said wasn't being true. But at the same time, I couldn't help but wonder how many people believed what was being said. Our own president was using racially targeted terms to bash China on national television. I knew people were going to act on their frustrations, but never in a million years did I expect it to be as bad as it was. In January of 2021, 40-year-old Michelle Go was pushed onto the train tracks of an oncoming train and crushed to her death. A month later, 35-year-old Christina Lee was followed home to her New York apartment and murdered. The next month in March, a 67-year-old woman was punched 125 times, stomped on, and then spat on. She suffered many lacerations, contusions, internal bleeding, and facial fractures. Less than a week later, 6 Asian women were shot to death in Atlanta's fall, which is known today as the Fall shooting. These women were all good people. They were hardworking and were just trying to make ends meet. But what fueled the malicious intent of their attacks was the idea that they were of Asian ethnicity. Following the pandemic, Asian hate has caused Asians to feel more foreign and unwanted as ever. From March of 2020 to December of 2021, over 11,000 hate incidents were reported. And according to Pew Research, a third of Asian Americans fear that they're going to be attacked. 81% said that they noticed Asian hate against them increasing. A study at the California State University in San Bernardino revealed that although overall hate crimes decreased by 7%, crimes against Asian Americans increased by 150%. Now approaching the end of my junior year, I begin to stress and think about college more than ever. And I can't help but think that my ethnicity has a negative impact on my chances of being accepted. According to researchers at Princeton University, Asian Americans must score 140 points higher on the SAT than someone who identifies as, say, white, in order to have an equal chance at admission. These numbers are even higher in comparison to ethnicities such as African American or Latino. Another Princeton study revealed that if ethnicity were to be removed from the admissions process, Asians would be the biggest beneficiaries, with their acceptance rate increasing by 6%. No other ethnicity group was nearly as affected. Now, why is that? The reason is College admissions officers hold Asians to a higher standard and often compare them to each other instead of the rest of the applicant pool. In doing so, they hope to better diversify their campus, but at the same time, each year, thousands and thousands of hardworking and well-educated and well-qualified students are denied acceptance into their dream colleges largely due to their race. Now, I want to make it clear that my goal through this TED Talk isn't to use this platform or these statistics as an excuse to push the agenda that Asian Americans have it worse than other minority groups, because, to be honest, that isn't true. My goal is to spread awareness on the issue because the media doesn't always portray these things, and because of that, Asian hate is often overlooked and pushed and gone under the radar. I'd also like to add that as a community, we must objectively ask ourselves what we can do to empower each other to take back the American dream. Well, how do you do it? What I'm not going to do is stand up here and ask you all to whip out your phones and post hashtag Stop Asian Hate, because that's not going to do anything. What I'm asking you guys to do is first recognize that the American dream has been kidnapped by a very small portion of our society, and that the dissolution of it is everybody's problem. What I'm asking us to do is to be aware of the issue and to raise consciousness towards it. This is no easy task, but it starts with something very achievable. It starts with embracing different. Everything that I've discussed tonight, every form of discrimination lies on the basis of being different. But what if we just took a step back and instead of criticizing people for their differences, embrace them? What if we embrace different ideas, different people, different cultures, different opportunities? The list goes on. This is something that we can all do, but what we can't do is just sit around and wait for the American dream to come to us. What we can't do is just wait for someone to rally us all in support or fight for us so a change will be made. Let's be the generation that makes a difference. We must be this change. Thank you.